Welcome to a new week of This Is Going Well, I Think, with David Cooper. I am David Cooper. It's This Is Going Well, I Think, the show where no one's listening, no one cares. That show where every episode's the last episode. During today's show, we'll cover a bunch of news items. And while doing the research for today, I went to apnews.com, Associated Press. And I saw something on there that really, I think, illustrates the sorry state of things these days. On the website header, it had the following topics: Trump rally shooting, bird flu, Israel-Hamas war, and Amazon Prime Day. What is wrong with this world? And by that I mean, are you looking forward to getting great deals on Amazon Prime Day? We got a great show lined up for you today. In about 10 minutes, we will talk to music publicist and commentator and SiriusXM radio host Eric Alper. Someone I used to talk to a lot, haven't talked to in a while. We'll cover AI music and a K-pop AI music experiment that maybe takes things a little too far. I'll be very curious to hear what Eric has to say about AI music, and I'm sure you will be too. After that, a psychotherapist to discuss the topic of functional freeze. Do you ever shut down, become unresponsive, or just plain check out when faced with an overwhelming situation? You may well be falling victim to functional freeze. It's not a DSM manual psychiatric disorder yet, but it is really interesting, and I'm looking forward to covering that. Afterward, it's political commentator Tony Five, our foreign correspondent, to go over the news of the day. Celebrity deaths, the shooting at a Trump rally. We'll get serious, we'll get stupid. It's the Tony Five you know and the Tony Five you love. And after that, whatever your thoughts and whatever you've read about the horrific shooting this weekend, there's one thing I can say with great certainty: the photographs taken at that event are nothing short of astonishing. Now, the tech expert I have on this show, Carmi Levy, is also a photography expert. So we're going to analyze those photos, the photographers, and really look at it from that perspective. On a little segment I call, It's Time for Photography Time. That is the show. I'm looking forward to doing it, looking forward to you hearing it, and it's all about to kick off. But first, this. And our first top story of the day is out of this world, literally. Because space. Yes, I've used that joke before. Well, you heard it here first. Nerdy space scientists have designed a brand new spacesuit that can turn urine into drinking water. Jesus did it with wine, and space scientists are doing it with urine. Sort of. Well, not to wine, but urine to water instead of water to wine. Moving on. The scientists are calling it a still suit, just like in the sci-fi classic Dune. So the next time you see a video of an astronaut sipping on a water tube, just remember that might have been their morning pee. Let's hope they didn't eat chicken wings and drink beer the night before. The creators of these suits hope to have them ready for NASA's Artemis program before 2030. They want astronauts to perform longer spacewalks without worrying about running out of water. Who knew the greatest invention of the space race would be drinkable urine? Move over, Tang. A researcher at Cornell says the suit includes a vacuum-based catheter and a rather fancy filtration system. It sounds like a high-tech version of a Brita filter, but for pee. Or is it Brita? Brita? The suit takes only 5 minutes to turn urine into potable water, which is faster than my coffee machine in the morning. Not bad. NASA's Artemis 3 mission in 2026 is gearing up to land a crew on the lunar South Pole, and they've got big plans for Mars by the 2030s. But right now, astronauts are stuck with these adult nappies called maximum absorbency garments, or MAGs for short, and they're about as comfortable as they sound. Not at all. Space diapers. You wouldn't want to pee in one. And all this is in response to astronaut complaints about leaks and urinary tract infections. Some even avoid eating and drinking before spacewalks. I mean, these people get to tell their friends they're amazing astronauts doing amazing things, but then they have to admit to basically wearing a glorified diaper. When asked, many astronauts say they're tired of the leaks from these spacesuits. Imagine being out there in space and playing the game, is it sweat or is it pee? And though I've never played the game myself, it does not sound fun, and it doesn't sound fun to play in space. Anyway, back to that researcher from Cornell I mentioned before. They're quoted as saying, "Even without a desert planet, like in Dune, we need this." The still suit system uses a silicone cup that fits snugly around your private parts, your essentials, and a moisture-activated pump that kicks in when nature calls. The urine gets filtered. It separates water from the salt with an efficiency of 87%. Then the purified water can be turned into an energy drink, so forget Gatorade. Try Urinade. The system is compact and light. It weighs 8 kilograms, which makes it easy to put on a spacesuit. They are planning on testing it with 100 volunteers in New York. Wait, did I just read New York? Hold on a second. I got to go sign up for something. And for those volunteers that get chosen, you might even say, you're in luck to them. Get it? Get it? You're in luck? You're in luck? You're in luck, but also you're in luck? Anyway, they're doing these tests to make sure the system worked perfectly before using them in space, which makes sense to me. The innovative design was first published in a science journal dealing with space technology. So next time you're complaining about your water filter at home, remember, at least you're not recycling your own pee. There's a Kevin Costner Waterworld joke tucked in there somewhere, but you're in luck, because I'm out of pee puns. And in racy news, a hot topic straight from the world of online marketplaces. So, you know Etsy, right? The online marketplace where you can buy everything from hand-knitted scarves to artisanal candles that smell like the tears of your ex. Yes, that Etsy. They have decided to ban the sale of homemade sex toys. That's right, if you were making dildos on the side or selling vintage Playboy magazines, you won't be able to do that on Etsy starting next month. Now, when I saw this, I thought, is this the same Etsy that prides itself on being a haven for unique and creative items? Well, yes, it is. But they've decided that sexual pleasure is too unique and too creative for their tastes. Think of the children. Etsy's head of trust and safety says the ban is to keep users safe. Safe from what? A well-crafted vibrator? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? A bit of a buzzkill if the batteries die too soon? And don't get me started on those vintage porn mags. Are we really worried that someone's going to get a paper cut from a 70s Playboy? One seller on Etsy, whose store sells fetish apparel, called it a betrayal. She says Etsy is turning its back on the sex-positive community. I tend to agree. It's like finding out that your favorite punk band is now just playing elevator music. All that aside, imagine building a small business, selling on Etsy for 10 years, only to have the platform tell you gotta pack up and leave. Pack up with your vibrators. Other sellers on the platform, one who says they've been making handmade dildos since 2018, also say they're bummed. They've got 30 days to find a new platform or ramp up in-person sales. And where are they going to go? Are they going to set up a booth at the local farmer's market next to the organic kale and handmade soap? Will they try to lure in people by saying, try our dildos? They're locally sourced and free range. But let's get serious and talk about the broader societal impact. Bans like this reinforce the idea that sexual health and pleasure are taboo, which they should not be. Why can't people sell a sex toy that promises a good time? Yet another sex toy seller on Etsy posted an open letter saying it's already tough running an adult business because most payment processors will not work with them. They say Etsy's ban is a lazy solution, saying it's all about keeping investors and advertisers happy because nothing says safe like pandering to puritanical views. That was sarcasm. And Etsy's not been doing great. They've been bleeding money. They've reported first quarter profits that are down from last year. Maybe they're hoping by disallowing selling things on Etsy, they'll bring in big bucks. I don't know. But if they are trying to play it safe, maybe they should start selling chastity belts next. I hear there's a market for that. Oh wait, you won't be allowed to sell chastity belts on Etsy. Moving on. So there you have it. Etsy, the marketplace that allegedly loves creativity. That is creativity as long as it's boring. And if you ask me, and I know you didn't, Etsy should let people sell sex toys on the platform. If I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. Nothing says unique and handmade quite like a custom crafted dildo. And in adorable criminal news, police in Southern California are issuing a warning about hugging robbers. Yes, these bandits aren't just after your valuables, they want a hug first, which to me is a rather confusing signal. Here's what happened. A guy in Rancho Santa Margarita was just minding his own business when a car pulled up in front of his driveway. A woman jumped out with her arms wide open like she was his long-lost aunt from some cheesy soap opera, only to try to yank the gold chain off his neck. You'd think she was trying to steal a heart, but no, jewelry. Now, when our victim gave the police a detailed description of the crime, It turns out that the two lovebirds, the driver and the hugger, have been pulling this act all over the county. But fear not, the next day, the Orange County Sheriff's Department tracked down and nabbed the hugging duo. During a search of the suspect's car, police found 50 pieces of jewelry. That's a lot of bling and a lot of hugs. Authorities are now urging anyone to be cautious if strangers approach them with open arms, because let's face it, unless you're at some weird cult event or at a family reunion, hugs from strangers should be a red flag. But I gotta hand it to these crooks. They are trying to make crime adorable. But is this really what we need? A new strain of affectionate criminals? Next thing you know, we'll have kissing burglars and hand-holding carjackers. So keep an eye on your valuables and maybe save the hugs for after you've done a background check. Keep jewelry hidden and your hugs to yourself. Coming up in just a few moments, sparked by a K-pop, a Korean pop band using AI to generate novel music, and the potential reaction and backlash to that, music commentator and publicist Eric Alper is going to join me and have a wider conversation about artificial intelligence in music. Hey, I'm just an idiot, but he knows a lot about music, so this conversation is going to be fascinating to you. We are here to discuss AI music and an AI experiment that's happening in K-pop. We're here with publicist, music commentator, and host of @That Eric Alper Show on SiriusXM. I think the show's still called that. Eric Alper, it's been a while. It's lovely to see you.
Been a while since isn't that a song? Isn't that a song? It's been a while since yeah.
What do you mean, isn't that a song? You're the one who knows whether that's a song or not.
Why am I asking you? I could just, yeah. How are you? So good to hear you.
Doing well. I am doing well, and I hope it's not just the seasons, because I have the most hilariously named psychological disorder in the world, SAD, seasonal affective disorder.
Yes.
Whoever came up with that is a genius.
Oh, brilliant, right? Like half marketing, half psychological recourse of actually curing a psychological disease analysis. But then part of it was like, if we're going to make this spread, we have to come up with a catchy name. Serial killers are like that too, right? Like, if you've got a really funny, kind of cute, twee name attached to you, you'll be known, but nobody wants,
Are you a true crime guy? Or is that
No, but I've noticed that the way that the media gives names to certain disasters make it all the more worthwhile for it to spread. So that's what I'm interested in.
I feel like U.S. Congress does this with like bills, like the Patriot Act. I don't remember what the U.S. Patriot Act was, but it was like, I just looked it up.
The peanut butter and jelly bill.
No.
And it's just all about food, right? Milk. Right?
Yeah, they do. Okay, so USA Patriot Act, that's the horrible act that we now realize was a total breach on our privacy, but it was meant to help the government find terrorists in 2001, and it stands for Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism Act.
See, they had a dictionary.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But if they would have called it peekaboo, it would have gone through with no problem because it's cute. It's like, oh, we're just spying on you, peekaboo.
The peek. Anyway, the government does this. They release bills with hilarious acronyms. Not important. We're here to talk about AI music, but I want to start with someone I had on my show a few weeks ago. The producer, record label, songwriter, maybe obscurest vinyl, whose song I glued my balls to my butthole went viral. He wrote the lyrics and he came up with the album covers, like he's a graphic designer. And the song is, I gotta say, catchy, but when you heard it, you must have died a little bit inside.
Yes and no. Yes, because it's just another sign that I'm getting older. But no, because I realized that the line between what you and I and our audience would deem as, quote, respectable musicians making music, it's just another sign that line is completely blurred. Because, look, let's go back a little bit, because social media in general, when you go through MySpace and AOL chat and the beginnings of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, they all start with a plan. And then it's the audience that kind of moves the needle to the center on what we now think it is. So when you go back to Apple Music, for instance, or Apple products, inventing things like GarageBand or putting the tight beats online, you have a couple of bedroom producers back then that took it really seriously. Now, though, you have pretty much anybody off the street can take a wrecking ball to music with this AI driven technology that not only are the best and biggest producers in the world using it right now, that there was a study that came out with producers that had songs on the Billboard Hot 100, and confidentially, they answered that almost 65% of those producers have used AI on their hit song. It could be helping them finish off a beat, or writing a lyric, or making it sound like Marvin Gaye from 1972 with this drum beat. So they're using it a lot. And now what we're seeing is just, artists like the one that you just interviewed, and also a lot of K-poppers that are using AI technology to just finish off their songs and or get as much material out there as possible just to see what hits.
Okay. Before we get to K-pop, I want to go a little deeper, because there's two things that come to mind to me here that I want to discuss. One is the ethical questions that are raised, and the other, and maybe this is one of the more unique conversations you've ever had, Eric, because my background's in computer science. Like, I studied software engineering. I worked in Silicon Valley as a software engineer for 10 years. So I want to talk about something called the Turing test, but we'll get to that in a second. Ethical questions. So how these AI models are trained. They soak in every bit of music that they can.
Yeah.
And then they figure out, based on all that, what to present to you as your whatever you want to, what's the word I'm looking for here? When you ask the AI a question to generate music, it takes into account everything it was trained on to generate an answer. There's copyright questions there, right? Like if you trained every single Coldplay song to generate something that was Coldplay-ish, should you be allowed to do that?
Yeah, that's what the music industry is grappling at right now, and will for a long, long, long time. Because, back in the day when rappers were using old 1950s and 60s and early 1970s drum beats or guitar licks, they would change it, or that they would use it, and not give credit. And it took, years of the major labels of, back then, there were like a lot of them, but, for this conversation, the Warner Music, Universal, and Sony lawyers to track down and get them in court and say, you were using this piece of music and you are not paying for it. So now we want either a credit or we need for you to take it down. Now, though, you end up with producers that are actually working with listeners to manipulate the audio on their own. So, there's a couple of artists out there. So let's take Rodney Jerkins, for instance, who's a huge producer. He used AI technology to find a VHS tape of Wu-Tang Clan's Old Dirty Bastard on a SZA track. And so he actually kind of manipulated and took away all of the instruments, used the vocal line for it, and all the parties that were controlling the rights to, Wu-Tang gladly gave permission, because they know now that it's going to actually help their own sales.
And they know that Wu-Tang Clan should not have been f***ed with. So, I mean, you don't want to do that.
Right. And that it's for the children.
I had to say it.
Yeah, exactly. So now the record labels are trying to figure out how to actually bring in the fans and artists closer together. How do you actually give the stems or the keys to the song in a way that the artist is comfortable with, and let people really go wild with it? Because we've seen that with TikTok viralness. We've seen that with Instagram, with people kind of moving and changing and bending songs to their will, using one line of this song and another line for that song and mashing them up together. As long as the artist gets paid, you're kind of free to do what you want to do in most cases.
Okay, so you're talking about when the artists do license or do allow AI to kind of extrapolate what they've written. But back to where they don't, I know artists are coming together and saying, hey, you can't train your AI models on our songs without our permissions. And I agree with that. I don't think they should. I think it's kind of stealing in some sense. But on the other hand, isn't every artist a product of what they've heard. Like if, I don't know, Marvin Gaye was born and raised in a forest and never met another person and never heard any music except for the birds chirping and the river running, you know, and he, for whatever reason, was a musical prodigy, having never met another musician. Do you think he would sound like Marvin Gaye? No, not at all. So on the one hand, it's like, well, isn't every artist doing what AI is doing? They're taking everything they've heard and adding a little more to it. So it's interesting. These ethical questions don't have answers necessarily, or they have multiple answers. It's not black and white, but at the same time, it's raising all these very curious questions.
Oh yeah. You know, look, I've had conversations with artists on tour buses where they were saying to me that they learned the riff to their now multi-million-dollar song because they slowed down another guitar riff and changed maybe one or two notes in that guitar riff, or they played it backwards. But this is in the 60s when it was kind of known. But you know, it's look, without going off on a tangent, it's like when you talk to older artists about cultural appropriation, they really don't understand the fuss about it because they all came from the school of Elvis Presley and the Beatles, who learned their craft watching Black R&B artists and ripping them off in most cases completely, at least in the beginning of it. So it is it's a generational thing for sure, but it's also that the record labels are so powerful. They have so much, hundreds of millions of dollars given to the government for, you know, to sway in their direction. So you end up with a lot of AI related problems that the music industry is going to have to deal with eventually, and quicker than later.
Can they stop it? I mean, they stopped Napster, but when we come back, we'll discuss this. I do want to talk about something called the Turing test, because I don't think you've heard of this, and it's coming. And it has to do with something called the tech singularity. You're going to love this, Eric. When we come back, we'll talk about that. We're talking AI music. And finally, we'll get to the K-pop AI experiment. We're here with Eric Alper, publicist, music commentator, host of That Eric Alper Show on SiriusXM. We're here with Eric Alper. He is the host of That Eric Alper Show on SiriusXM. He's a publicist, a music commentator. He's no stranger to the Juno Awards, and he's kind of handsome with the long hair, I got to say. Do you mind me hitting on you, Eric? I never know.
Not at all, as long as we're still, you know, in different countries.
We're talking about AI music. Okay. There's something called the tech singularity, and it's this idea that technology will become so good, AI will become so good, it'll transform society in completely unknown ways. And one of the markers of that is this thing called the Turing test. And without getting too technical here, the Turing test is when a person is conversing with an AI, maybe you're typing to it, you know, and you cannot tell the difference between that and a human. And the person who's doing the Turing test, who's trying to detect whether it's an AI, they can be the most, you know, an expert in artificial intelligence, and still they can't tell the difference. So this is a very kind of like thought experiment, computer science, futuristic thing. But if I modify it slightly to art, okay, it's the point in time where you cannot tell the difference between art created by a computer or a person. So like a television show, it is so good, you can't tell the difference.
Yeah. And it's already happening though. Like with that song, Heart on My Sleeve, the one that was like AI Drake and AI The Weeknd doing a duet. It sure sounds like the artist, but neither of them stepped into the studio to actually record it. Or having David Bowie sing a Nirvana song. So good. But what, you know, going back to this test and going back to what you were saying, does it matter that people are being fooled? And I think that's going to be an answer that we're all going to have to kind of answer.
Yes, but what if the next generation, where you're born in a world where the question, this thing that I'm consuming, it's either fake or real, it's either computer generated or human generated. Like what if kids being born now, where that's just like, what if they don't care as much as us? Do you know what I mean?
They don't care. Adults don't care. We're seeing it now with in the political world, where AI is getting Joe Biden and Donald Trump to say things in videos that they never said, and it's causing some real damage. But what is going to be interesting is, so going back to the music stuff for a second, when you are an artist and you're in the recording studio, there are probably hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of instrumentation and vocal lines that were not used at the end of the day for the finished song or for the finished album. The record label still has access to all that stuff. Because, it's like, the band isn't walking in there doing their song in 3.5 minutes and then walking out. Sometimes it takes hours, days, weeks, months, even years. So what's going to be interesting is will those files, will those song clips now be used for future releases and kind of tweaked and mixed and getting, Paul McCartney to sing things that he never really sung. The interesting is to me is is the audience going to even care? Are you such a fan of K-pop and 17 and Blackpink and all of these other artists that you don't care that 10%, 40%, 90% of the music that you're hearing is generated through AI? And are you even being told the truth by these artists and record labels in the first place? Everybody is going to lie to generate a hit, to generate something going viral. So I think we're going to go into a giant mess, and I'm kind of a little bit freaked out and frightened that that it's going to be happening.
Music is so easy for an AI to fake, videos, TV shows, some of these deeper things, it'll take a longer time. But this whole idea that once technology gets so good that you can't tell the difference between it and a person, and when technology, when AIs can improve themselves, like if you train an AI on training AI models and it improves itself, like, society is going to change in unimaginable ways. And I think it's going to start with music first, because generating...
It usually does. Yeah. It usually starts with art first, for sure. For sure. And look, people don't even know that you and I talking, we're not here.
No.
This is all AI. This is just a large experiment to prove our point in the first place. And it all depends on who it is too. Going back to K-pop and J-pop for a moment, in those countries, in those cities, in those continents, in that part of the world, they are so amazingly loving technology far faster than North Americans are, that those fans might actually be really keen on having this kind of innovation. There's already anime characters that are doing 3D concerts, selling out arenas around the world. One of them just played at Coachella this year. So it's kind of fascinating that, if, and I'll just kind of throw this in there as well. I started talking about this to people like you last year when Paul McCartney came out and said that they were using AI technology for the brand new Beatles song that ended up coming out called Now and Then. People got really freaked out by that. People were very, very confused and angry and hurt because they thought that the Beatles were going to be using AI to make John Lennon sing things that he never sung. But it turns out that what they were using AI for was to strip all the noise and the sounds and the garbage that they didn't want during the recording process to just make it cleaner. The older fans were not happy about that AI. But if you're talking to a 17-year-old, they're probably thinking, absolutely use AI for a new Beatles song. We want more of it.
It's interesting. Okay, we've been alluding to this story and using it as the basis for the most tangent-oriented conversation. And I've loved every minute of it, but let's talk about the K-pop band 17, because a lot of the things we're talking about are happening with them. And will the fans care? What you're saying is maybe not, but you want to walk us through what's going on with that K-pop band?
Yeah, so 17 is a huge band. They've sold about 16 million albums last year, making them one of the most successful K-pop groups in history. And the recent album and the single called Maestro features an AI-generated scene in the music video. And Woozi, who is a member of 17, mentioned experimenting with AI in music creation to leverage technology to actually help the country and the companies there get better in what they're doing. And so, he had to later clarify on Instagram that no, all of 17's music was actually written and composed by human creators, but fans of the group started to become a little bit divided about calling for more regulations. Do you have to put a warning sign now, like some people are asking for in concerts when somebody is going to be lip syncing? How much fakery is an audience willing to take on it? And I think a lot of fans know that they're using AI and ChatGPT in their daily lives without even knowing it. Like you alluded to, doing chats for help or for just writing essays or for finishing up work. So it's going to be really fascinating to see, but it's never going to be ever 100% this is real, like it was maybe in the 50s and 60s, where, we wanted our musician favorites to play their instruments or, do this. But that wasn't legit. Frank Sinatra never wrote a song. Elvis Presley never wrote a song.
Yeah, the record labels were kind of creating these narratives to sell records that may or may not be true.
Anything with technology. The Beatles didn't record that backwards guitar solo. They with the help of technology, has always been able to move the music industry and art forward more than the artists themselves. It's what they do with it is fascinating. And again, like going back to what I think we were talking about with AI helping the lyric writing or lacking the innovation to actually create something from scratch. But this is only the AI that you and I know about today. They're probably got stuff right now that they're just waiting to launch 6 months down the road, a year down the road, that is going to blow their mind. And again, the audience will dictate whether or not, if they know about this, if they want this.
They may not know, though. That's what I'm saying. They may be lying too, and they may not be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
That's the sad part.
Yeah. That's the sad part. Because nobody asked for the Beatles, right? Nobody asked for the Sex Pistols or Ed Sheeran or Billie Eilish or Taylor Swift. They just got it and they liked it. So maybe nobody's asking for the top 10 hits on Billboard to be all created by AI. Maybe they won't know. Maybe they won't care.
It's a scary, brave new world out there. Thanks for talking about this with me, Eric. It's also really nice to see you. It's been a while.
It's good to see you too. Thanks for having me, David.
Eric Alper, check him out on SiriusXM. His show is called @That Eric Alper Show. He's a publicist, a music commentator, and a man about town. Because of something that's overwhelming in life, have you ever faced a complete emotional shutdown? Have you ever become unresponsive or completely checked out? That may be something called functional freeze. We're going to dig into that, when it's normal and when it's a problem, with a psychotherapist. If you've not experienced it, maybe you know someone who has, and this might help them. So that'll be in a few moments. Do you ever shut down, become unresponsive, or check out when faced with an overwhelming situation? You may be experiencing something called functional freeze. We're here to talk to a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist about just that. His name is Chase Cassine. Chase, thanks for being here today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, David.
So I don't know that it's like an official DSM diagnosis, classification, but I also know lots of things aren't that until they are. So let's talk about functional freeze. Do you want to just define it for me and how it differs from like other stress responses, maybe like fight or flight?
Well, let's do a quick little biology history lesson in a sense of similar to fight or flight response. The freeze response is an evolutionary defense mechanism. So basically, in the past, as our ancestors who faced danger with dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff, in today's modern world, we are faced with a lot of threats and danger with overwhelming tasks like work, right? Having to work and having to take care of kids, take care of our pets, all these different things that can bring about a good stress, but it also can be distressful to us as well. So in that way that our body can perceive these things as threats, it's where the freeze response, which we're not even aware of it most times because we're able to still function, but it's where the indecisiveness, the not really want to do anything that we don't want to do, canceling with friends or withdrawing from them. So it looks like that.
Like decision paralysis. And we always talk about fight or flight when we talk about stressful situations, but there's also this idea of like deer in the headlights. I feel like this is the third option. When the deer is confronted with the scary situation, the deer freezes, and then maybe the analogy is bad because then the deer gets hit by the car. Maybe that happens to us. How does functional freeze show up in our everyday life? Like, what are some scenarios that you've seen or that you've heard of?
Well, what I've seen and what I've heard of and working with people as well as personally, it shows up as bed rotting, which has been a popular TikTok verbiage. bed rotting where we just don't want to do anything. It's a lot of doom scrolling. It is, again, withdrawing from friends, canceling on any plans. Outwardly, a person may look like, okay, well, they're taking pictures, they're posting, they're doing things, they appear outwardly to be doing well, but internally they're emotionally numb. So it looks like, again, it looks like the doom scrolling. It looks like just the lethargy of just staying in bed, canceling plans, just lack of mobility, just lack of decision making, being very indecisive. That is exactly how it looks.
So I imagine a little bit of this is okay. You know, like every now and then if we get confronted with a massive stress and it's a one-off, it's sort of like a temporary functional freeze. But can this happen in a more chronic way where it's not just, once in a while? It's normal to have these maladaptive responses every now and again. We're all human. But is there a sort of a chronic state here where functional freeze happens to people all the time and it's unending?
Yes, because functional freeze, again, although it's not a DSM-5 diagnosis yet, it's a symptom of depression and anxiety. And about 1 in 4 people are dealing with a mental health disorder, and anxiety and depression are the most common. So with that, many people can feel stuck, overwhelmed, think negatively about themselves, like, okay, is something wrong with me? And we all deal with those negative internal thoughts, right? So it's where these things can be interpreted as, okay, maybe I'm just lazy. Maybe I'm just procrastinating. I don't know what's going on. But it's actually a stress response to being emotionally exhausted, overwhelmed, with whatever in life, stress, et cetera, et cetera. And so it is where it can be where that is a stress response that we often utilize a lot of times, right? And so it can be where we can become stagnant and get stuck there in that freeze response, and it can persist. And that's where if we are stuck there and we do it more often than not, then that's when it becomes an issue.
I can relate to that. I think I'm an F33.1, major depression, severe recurrent episode or moderate recurrent episode. I lost my job November of 2022. And for 6 months, I was just like, everything was too painful for me. And so I just was kind of checked out,
Yes. Yes. And in losing your job, so that is okay. When we think of the word trauma, and I know trauma is so broad, right? A lot of times we inherently think about it as, okay, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. And these things are traumatic experiences, but you losing your job, although it's not a loss of a life or a pet or these different, these different things. However, it's a loss, right? And you can also have a hard time processing that in a way in which, okay, my job that was tied to my identity in a sense.
Very much for me. I was a radio personality. That was what I was, and that was who I am, and that was what I worked on becoming. And then boom, it's gone. It was my shrink called it a narcissistic loss, which I took offense to. I'm like, you're calling me a narcissist, and then he's like, no, that's not what that is. That's like when you get a hit to your ego and a part of your identity goes. So yeah, I mean, you're right. It's not the kind of trauma that we see that is like awful. It's a regular, everyday, overwhelming situation that can happen to anyone, but it is overwhelming nonetheless.
It is, so we don't want to disregard it. I don't want to invalidate your feelings as well as anybody out there feelings, because that loss was your loss. So with your loss, you can have a hard time processing it, because yes, it was tied in a way, your ego, right? Your identity. However, it was a loss to you, and having a hard time processing that loss can be difficult.
And that's what happened to me. So let's talk about professional help and functional freeze. If people are getting the kind of what's being called on TikTok as the bed rot, if people aren't getting the motivation to do anything, and when faced with decisions that may seem overwhelming to them, sending out a resume, doing their taxes, working on their divorce, like these are big things that people wrestle with. And when they're just unable to do it at all, and they just do nothing and stay in bed or just put it off to another day, can professional help? Can professional help? Yeah, I think that's a correct sentence.
No, professional help can help in finding a qualified therapist, right? To help provide one, let's provide a safe space, a safe and open space for that person to feel comfortable enough to share. That also is about that having that therapeutic alignment where that empathy and that compassion is being cultivated in that space to collaboratively work to assist that client in identifying these thoughts, providing tools about how the brain, the nervous system, and the body all works together,
Mhm.
and giving that evolutionary context to just tie it all in and make it make sense, right? That way, that can help that person within their body feel safe, centered, and grounded. So to navigate this and identify some coping skills and some ways in which freeze, flight, or fright can show up as a stress response.
Got it. So that's kind of the professional side. What about a friend? Because I have found, later in the show today, we'll hear from Tony, who's on the show regularly. And he's
Mhm.
gone through periods where he's just like not well, not able to do radio. And I
Mhm.
know he's struggling. And I
Yes.
just check in on him every day or every other day. I just offer, I'm like, hey, I'm here. You don't have to respond to me. If you
Yes.
want to talk, I'm here. Also, I don't need anything from you. You know, like I don't want to add to your stress. Don't feel like you're letting me down. Checking in on friends in a non-judgmental way is my strategy. I don't know if you'd consider that a good one. So my question for you is, when you observe friends or family that are in this state,
Mhm.
how best to help them?
Well, I have to let you know that I agree with your strategy, that it's coming from a place of this is a person that I care about. I'm their friend. They're my friend. I'm checking on this other person that I care about. So checking in on people. I know we all are so busy and caught up in things that we have to do, but just things that we find to be so small and could overlook, like, I'm not a therapist. No, you may not be a licensed therapist, but you are a human being that cares about another human being. And so, as human beings, we need our villages. We need people to give us that pat on the back. We need people to encourage us because that all cultivates that connectivity that we need as human beings. So, I agree with that. Checking in on people. Do you need me to do anything? It's okay if you don't respond. That's okay. I'm just letting you know I'm here whenever you do want to talk. So I agree with that strategy.
And for me, when I'm in that state, when people reach
Hmm.
out and they're like, hey, you were supposed to do this with me, or hey, like you haven't responded in a while, when they start asking things of me or
Hmm.
laying it on, or like I missed a commitment and because I was feeling a sense of functional freeze and they're like, hey, you need to, it's like, oh, it makes it even worse. And when people reach out saying, hey, I don't need anything from you,
Hmm.
I'm not mad at you,
Yes.
but I'm here. To me, that's the best strategy. But I guess it's hard. You don't always know what your friends are experiencing if they're not like your closest friends. So I don't know. That's my strategy. I don't know if it works but yeah, yeah.
It, I mean, your strategy it is a great strategy. I think often as human beings, because we don't know what's going on, right? We make up, I like to call them false narratives in our mind of what's going on. Oh, this person, I see them online. They're not responding to my text. So they left me on red. I don't know what's going on. So we create, because there is this, uh disconnect with, I text them, they haven't responded. We want to fill in the blanks, right? And so we create these elaborate soap opera, Young and the Restless, Days of Our Lives, Passions, storylines within us. And then that can also create more like division in the sense of I may have read it by accident or may not have been in the mental space to respond. Or I was online because listen, nothing wrong with being online. That can be a good escapism from what that person is dealing with. So it's nothing personal. Inherently, we take a lot of things so personal when it's not about us.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, Chase, that's all the time we have. I really appreciate you talking with me today. Thanks for spending the time.
Thank you for having me. I definitely appreciate speaking with you about functional freeze.
There you go. Chase Cassine, he's a licensed social worker, a psychotherapist. Check out his book, The Sweetest Therapy. That's available wherever books are sold. Chase, again, what a pleasure.
Thank you so much, David.
In just a moment's time, foreign correspondent Tony Five and I are going to talk the news of the day. That is President Trump being shot at a political rally, and several celebrities died this weekend. It's big stuff. We'll cover it with Tony Five. We'll be one part serious, one part stupid, and all parts awesome. You're not going to want to miss it. We are here with foreign We are here with foreign correspondent, he said, from London, England, to discuss a rather busy weekend. Tony Five, welcome.
David, always a pleasure to catch you in my afternoon, your early morning. This is when your whole life falls apart. This is when I'm sort of at my peak and my prime. So anybody listening will notice the absolute difference in the way I speak, which is very pronounced, very nice, very dulcet, and David's absolutely misfunctioning voice. So yes, welcome. Hello.
Hello, I'm going to leave in all my morning mistakes because they're fun. All right, something awful happened this weekend, something that has shocked all of us, something that you could not believe would happen in this country.
No.
And you hoped it would never happen.
Correct, David, I know.
Richard Simmons is dead.
David, I don't know how I'm going to get fit again. He had wonderful hair.
He did? Tell me about him.
I liked his leotards, or leotards, as you guys call it in the States. He's like one pieces. Full of energy, that man. Remind me of a guy called Leo Sayer for some reason. Maybe the hair.
Could be the leotards.
Or was he the same person? No, Leotard was one of my neighbors. A horrible person. Yeah, I told you, I'm on fire in the daytime. Absolute fire. You can have that one. Try to fish. I'll see you all week. But yeah, he was amazing. And sad to see he died of a treadmill-based injury.
Did he? I don't actually know how he died.
No, of course not, David. Why are you even spinning around to look at your computer? No, he didn't.
So there's some interesting stuff about him. He kind of disappeared out of the public eye for a 6 or 7 year period. I think he was just chilling. You know, he's had a very public life. He's a very eccentric guy, and he just wanted some privacy. But then these podcasters were like, well, Richard Simmons is dead, or Richard Simmons has disappeared, and it's a conspiracy. And they were like searching for him and this, that, and the other. And it was a very compelling narrative that they had going on. But at the end of the day, he was just like not making media appearances, and that was the whole story.
Is he the same person as Bob Ross that used to do the painting?
No, but I have a theory that Frank Zappa, Weird Al, and Howard Stern are all the same person.
I agree completely. You never see the three in the same room, David.
Exactly, especially not Frank Zappa. Now, some people will say it's because Frank Zappa's dead, but I think there's more.
No.
Yeah. Are Richard Simmons and Bob Ross the same person? We may never know. We may never know.
I knew Bob Ross, super fit guy. Richard Simmons, not bad with a paintbrush.
Exactly. Okay, let me tell you about the time I met Richard Simmons.
Shut up. No way.
I kid you not.
Oh, was that just a name drop, David? My goodness. Get you with your celebrity name drops.
Well, I didn't meet him through any celebrity of mine. I just was in the same public space as him at the same time. And let me tell you the story. So I'm 19. I have what is rather racistly or rather offensively called a Jew fro. Do you know what that is, Tony? I feel like because you're black and I'm Jewish, I can say this unique thing right now, a Jew fro.
You had a Jew fro?
You didn't know this about me?
No, it's amazing times. In fact, the last few times we've met online, I've asked you whether you've had a haircut, and your answer has been...
I just washed my hair.
Yep. So it's so bad that the fact that I think you cut your hair is... Oh, my... I've just seen a picture of your Drew fro. You look like a character from the Wonder Years.
I know. It's wild. If I tried to grow that out now, it would just be patchy and thin, and it would be horrible. But when I was a kid, I had very thick hair, and it came in very curly, and when I grew it out, it looked like that. I've got one more photo to show you, and I know it's not.
I'd get that tattoo on my thigh.
There's another
that's
one.
Beautiful.
Maybe I'll make the album cover of today's show my hair as a child.
Yes.
Done. Okay.
I had an afro when I was young. I'm gonna find that picture and send it to you.
Oh my God.
I had hair once.
Let's jump back into this story.
So
I'm 19. I have that hair, and I have my girlfriend. She's a blonde lady.
Doesn't work out well. You couldn't have had a Jew fro and a girlfriend. Sorry, not believable. Next.
Well, she was like a country girl. She rode a horse.
You don't need to call her that, David. Jesus. I mean, be nice.
She was. She grew up on a farm, and she was like a horseback rider. She was pretty cool.
Okay.
I was 19. We dated for a year. She had a horse trailer, and her personality was very much a horse trailer. She loved her horse. I never asked if it was between me and the horse, which would you choose? Because I knew the answer.
Because you would have lost
Yeah, you knew the answer. So, but that's not that relevant to the story.
the horse trailer.
It's her birthday or something, and I take her for lunch at the restaurant at the Four Seasons in Toronto. It's a ritzy lunch.
David,
Yeah, right?
19-year-old day, rocking the G-Fro, going to the Four Seasons. I mean, David, you have lived the life, my friend. You have lived the life.
Well, for lunch. I couldn't afford the dinner.
Okay, so 3 seasons. Carry on.
And we're in the lobby, and I'm wearing like a blazer, and she's, I don't know, maybe wearing a dress or something. She tugs me on the shoulder and she says, that's the workout guy. And I look, and there's this little short guy with the Richard Simmons hair.
Yeah.
The Jew-fro, I guess.
Was he wearing a leotard?
No, but he was with 3 guys in suits, and he was wearing like a casual shirt, like a bright t-shirt or something.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, that's Richard Simmons. And so I don't know, I'm an eccentric kid. I kind of like stand and get in his way. Like I kind of move so that there's going to be this interaction.
Yes.
And he looks at me. Okay. And he sort of stops, and the guys in the suits are trying to rush him along. I guess he's got a meeting or something. And he looks at me and he says, I love your hair. And I'm like, thank you. And he says, don't ever change it. And then he looks at me and it's like it's out of a movie. It's like he was playing himself, okay?
Okay.
He looks at me after saying, I love your hair, don't ever change it, and bursts out into song singing, don't go changing. And then he walks away, and I imagine that he disappears into a puff of smoke. Now, I made the puff of smoke part up, but in my memory, that's what happened. He looked at me, he commented at my hair, and he sang at me, and then he promptly walked away. And I was left standing there, knowing that my life would never be as good as this moment at 19.
David, that is such an epic interaction from such an epic man. R.I.P. Richard Simmons. And don't go changing. Na, 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 na. So how did he I don't know a lot about him. We used to see a couple of shows about him, but he's obviously famous because he's like a meme and he's in like various movies. But how did he become the Richard Simmons we know and love?
I don't know. I don't know the history of him. He grew up in New Orleans in Louisiana. Yeah. His mother was a Jew. Okay.
Nice. That's where your connection is. Nice.
His father was a Methodist, and
okay.
He became obese.
Isn't he the rapper?
He was not, what?
Isn't he a rapper? No, that's Method Man. Carry on, David.
He became obese, and he was bullied a lot.
Yes. Okay.
And he worked as a maitre d' at a hotel restaurant, and he worked in exercise studios. He set up a few gyms. He got interested in fitness. He opened up his own. Sorry, he worked at a few exercise studios.
Yeah.
He opened up his own studio called the Anatomy Asylum, and I think it just took off from there.
How did he appear on TV though? What was the break on? Was he just working out and somebody must have walked past the window or something? That's just fascinating how these people just have these normal lives and become famous like that. He was a really genuine character. I liked him.
I think his health club became very successful, and it drew in celebrities, and one thing led to another. He had guest roles in TV shows and movies, and then it really took off for him. And then he had a workout show. So, he was made fun of a lot, but I think he was a bit misunderstood. He just wanted to help people. He was a warm, bubbly man, and I'll miss him. He was one of, honestly, Tony, he was one of my closest friends.
I can imagine, and I'm sad that he died on choking a cheeseburger. So that's how he died, yeah?
He died, his death appeared to be from, quote, natural causes. That's all we know at this time.
Well, that's what a cheeseburger is, David, as you know. R.I.P. 1 minute silence, for the Richard Simmons.
1 minute.
So, what else happened this weekend, David?
I don't really think anything. I think it was a really slow
really quiet,
news weekend.
Apart from Richard Simmons. No, David, something else. Should we talk about it now?
Oh, yeah. As well.
It's a big thing, David. Yeah, big thing. Something that, again, I never would have thought happened. Shannon Doherty, David.
I know. All these...
Beverly Hills 9118247.
Unexpected celebrity deaths. Also, Dr. Ruth Westheimer, who I'll talk about with Samantha Biddy tomorrow, our sex expert.
Yeah.
I think there was something else, though. I'm just trying to rack my brain on what it was.
David. I had constipation.
That's what it was.
Yeah, really horrible. I squeezed like my esophagus was gonna fall out.
You got to be careful. You can give yourself a brain hemorrhage and you can give yourself
Yep.
anal fissures. You really have
Yep.
to be careful, Tony.
Anal fissures. Again, my Tinder name never generated that many swipes.
She was really good in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Also, I think Trump was shot, which we'll talk about when we come back with Tony 5. Tony 5 is here. He's our foreign correspondent. We're talking the news of the day. Donald Trump was the victim of an assassination attempt this weekend. And the country is losing its mind.
David, let me caveat and predispose this by saying I don't want anybody to die. He's a human, and, at the end of the day, he's probably shaken up. I weirdly was working that night when it happened. So I think it was normal time US, but very, very late UK time on the Saturday night. And I was watching it on it. Of all the places, I was at a large traffic data communication center, which had it was like I was in a NASA mission control unit. And I was working there for whatever reason. And so they fired this up, the whole BBC News thing on it. We were watching the live feed of it because obviously he was doing some sort of rally and there were reporters there. So they had continued broadcasting. And obviously I found it fascinating from the point of where nobody knew what was going on. And they don't know whether he's been killed or whatever. All they saw is they heard bullets fly by and they thought things were going on. All the and I found it fascinating. The speculation, until facts came in, the speculation. And I think I must have messaged you because I knew it was late. And then I don't know whether you'd heard about it already or I told you about it, but there was various things that were happening. And people in the UK were going mental. Every news channel was broadcasting.
I think you just had your I used to be an overnight radio host. You have your worst people on at that hour.
Correct. Who just make things up.
Like, I know is people saying this might tip the scales in Trump's favor, but I don't think that's I don't think that's a foregone. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion.
Foregone conclusion, yeah.
I always thought it was
an
a foregone. Like, I thought the word was a foregone, so a foregone conclusion. Instead of
She was my neighbor, Anne Foregone.
It's like aforementioned, It's not an aforementioned comment. It's not an a foregone. Not important. The British broadcasters were saying Trump's now going to win, and you were texting me that. And I'm like, well, maybe, but I think it's too soon to tell. And I don't think anyone who already was not going to vote for Trump and they really didn't like him was going to be convinced.
It's going to swing.
For example, my girlfriend doesn't vote for Trump. If I were American, I wouldn't vote for Trump. This would not swing me.
Correct. And I found that fascinating that people thought, and then obviously straight away there were the conspiracy theorists that think it was a setup. And there's a picture which is iconic. Now, I mean, take it all, whatever you want to say. There is a bleeding eared picture with Trump pumping his fist with a waving American flag in the background. That is iconic. Whoever's got that picture is going to be a multimillionaire and selling the rights to it. We're going to see that for the rest of our lives, regardless of whether he wins or loses. And the chaos that happened, and obviously each day there's more information coming about this kid who's only 20 that was killed.
I mean, they don't know much about him. He is a registered Republican. He also donated some money, but only $15. But he donated $15 to like a Democrat PAC or political action committee. And the FBI said they're saying there's no indication of any mental health issues at this time.
Right.
He's got no criminal record, and he was only 20 . And let me just say, he shot an innocent bystander who's now dead. There are two bystanders that are in critical condition. So this is like, tragedy. People are dead. It's awful. I am not a fan of Trump, but it's like, I don't believe in the death penalty,
Yeah.
Even when people are horrendous criminals, I still don't believe in the death penalty. I don't think any...
Because I disagree with that, but
really?
Why do you not believe it? Yeah, I do. I think child rapists, people that have really done awful, heinous things that are proved beyond reasonable doubt that they did the person, I think in some cases, an eye for an eye, I think
Leave the whole
switch-
world blind, Tony.
Yeah, I switch between things like that. Yeah, I again, I agree with your point. Eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. I believe there are some times where the state has to look after the person for the rest of their life, whilst the family of people have a horrific life sentence. And like I said, in the UK, the prison's pretty cushy. I don't know whether you've seen that recent video of what happens at Wandsworth Prison, but I don't mind going to prison sometimes.
It's not nice in the United States, I'll tell you that much.
Correct. And that's what I'm saying. So that's why I'm saying in the UK, we don't have that. And you get these people that live out their lives who have committed horrific crimes. And it's a mockery to the people that have died. Now, saying the death penalty, okay, I can understand that. But I don't think the punishment fits the crime for certain things. And there are some things that I would... you hear about these child killers and so on who it's not a mental health problem. It's just that they're maybe pure evil or whatever, knowing that even if they got caught, that they would live out the rest of their lives sometimes better than people who have never committed a crime. They'll have a roof over their head. They'll have 3 meals a day. They'll be exercised. They'll be looked after in hospital. And there'll be perfectly reasonable people who never do anything like that, who live on the street. So, yeah, I can see why. But what's your anti-death penalty stance?
Well, I don't think removing someone from society and confining them in a prison is better than... I don't think that's a cushy lifestyle, okay? That's removing the person's freedom entirely. And so, to me, that's enough of a penalty. I think if the state's murdering people, the state's killing people, it makes us no better than them.
Yeah, I can. That's another point.
And
So
I think there will always be abuse. There's always a possibility that someone's convicted falsely, no matter how much it seems like they are guilty of the crime. There's always a possibility for someone to be framed,
Yeah, I guess you haven't got the full...
I mean, what if
100%,
this child murderer that you're talking about was adopted and he was a twin and he didn't know that he was a twin and his other twin found out that he had a twin and he murdered all the children and he framed his twin that didn't know he existed. It's an absurd scenario. Just the possibility that the state could get it wrong.
It could be a mistake.
And they do get it wrong all the time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if you're doing it constantly, I guess I went to a discussion once and one of the people said that having the death penalty would be
it's barbaric. And even if what the person did is barbaric, I don't think we have the right as a society, if we can remove someone for their life, imprison them. If we can provide that, we should. Now, if it's like war times, like a military tribunal because someone's a war criminal and they're on the battlefield, sure. Like I'm not so far gone that, but yeah, I don't. I think if in times of peace,
you think civilians shouldn't have that. It's funny you say that because I don't know what the correlation is between having the death penalty and the threat. So do crime rates go down because people are fearful of facing that punishment? That would be quite interesting to know. Obviously, some states have got the death penalty with you guys and some haven't.
I'd also be interested to hear to hear statistics and interviews and facts from victim families where the perpetrator was executed. Did it make them feel better? Because you're saying it's making a mockery, but I don't know that that's true.
Well, again, it's the way it's presented, right? So there are some people who kind of even, forgive the person, they're like, they have a Christian belief and they say, yeah, like you said, no such thing as eye for an eye and losing one's life for another life is not good. But I would say I've heard more stories about in these particular percentages of where it's been a horrific crime. And I'm using the example of a child killer because it's like...
Yeah, but why do you think you're hearing those stories? Because they're controversial? Because that's what's going to get profiled? That's what's going to make an outraged family that's righteous anger. That's righteous indignation. So they have been wronged and they are angry and they have every right to be angry. That's the kind of story that you're going to hear.
But then my counter to that is they don't happen often. So... you will hear 100% of the reactions to child killings doesn't happen all the time. So every child killing that's ever happened in the UK that's been like that will have been publicized, and there will always be a statement about the family wanting some reciprocal justice. And then there's always going to be a discussion is, why don't we have the death penalty anymore? And then there's discussions like me and you are having. So yeah, it is headline grabbing, but I can say 100% that each time it happens, there are and it's very rare on those occurrences for people to say, no, I forgive. So I don't. There may be 1 or 2%. There may be people that go,
even
yeah,
forgive.
okay.
I don't know that I would forgive somebody if I was the victim of that crime, but I wouldn't want them dead. I would want them in jail for life. That's it.
And I think at that point in the UK, the people's argument is that putting them in jail for life is not for them a valid punishment. Whereas you don't think it is.
I feel
because
for
of the
them, but
restriction of
I
freedom.
think the rights of all of us as society members outweigh the rights of an angry family that's had an injustice done to them.
And you don't think it strips their rights once they've done that? You
No.
don't think that they no longer become a citizen?
I don't think
They
you
no
have the
longer
right
should-
to murder someone if they've murdered someone you know. I don't think you have that right. I know it feels that's what they want, but I don't think that's a right society should be conferring on people. I don't think the
I guess
judiciary should approve killings. I
I
don't.
guess it's the justifiable killing. It's whether you believe in the justifiable ending of a life, isn't
I
it?
think the only time you have a right to end a life is to protect another. That's it.
Okay.
And
That's
and
the only
even then,
time
it
you
needs
think-
to be, the force needs to be equal. If someone like isn't going to hurt you and they're just trying to rob you or something, or they're about to steal your car, you don't have a right to kill
Yeah.
them. But if they're
don't.
pointing a gun
Okay.
at you and you happen to have a gun, yeah, that would be the only time.
What about if they had a gun, you didn't, and you could wrestle the gun away from them? Would you threaten that person, or would you kill?
If you could
Immediate
apprehend them
life risk.
and stop the robbery or whatever without shooting
Mhm.
them, you have
Okay.
I believe you have a duty to do so. Yeah.
Okay, to protect you or protect others. That's an interesting
If you
take.
wrestle an attacker who has a gun and then he's completely incapacitated, maybe someone's wrestled him and you now have the gun, you don't have a right to shoot that person because you're angry.
Right, so it's the anger that you'd probably... So it's the premeditated version rather than the kind of crazy, this is what's going on in the situation and reactive, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you do shoot someone who's trying to rob you by accident, I don't think that's murder. There's a crime for that. It's called manslaughter.
Which it isn't, yeah, of course, yeah, which it isn't. It's like a manslaughter.
Let's get back to the Trump thing when we come back with Tony Five. We are here with Tony Five talking about what happened this weekend. Trump got shot. We got really sidetracked on the death penalty.
We didn't even talk about Trump getting shot.
I mean, what is there to say? There's this shooter climbs up on a building. There are
Yep.
bystanders saying that they were pointing him out or they noticed it.
Correct, a ginger guy. There's a ginger man who's there. He's like kind of semi-famous now. He said, I saw this guy. The Secret Service didn't do anything and he was climbing up with a gun and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, the kid, I call him a kid because he is,
young.
was there for ages. And for him to line up the shot, I mean, and missing Trump's head by inches, we're talking about millimeters.
Well, he hit his ear. He pierced his ear clean through.
And it was apparently it was an automatic rifle, which means that he could have fired out a couple more rounds and still missed. Because there was a few seconds between the shots being fired, which is probably like a targeting shot, so that he could estimate where he was, to him being hit in the ear, to the Secret Service jumping up and surrounding him, and then to the point where he's neutralized. Because apparently there's another thing going around on Twitter or X, is that the snipers, the Secret Service snipers, are then seeing this kid and then obviously shooting him on the rooftop. So you can see kind of happening in real time.
Yeah, they're called counter snipers or whatever. I think there was 4 of them.
Correct.
Which is, I guess, standard at any of these events. There's the Secret Service is ready to take out a sniper if one exists.
Absolutely. But there's a 2-man team. So I've worked with these guys in the past. So they've got a person holding the gun, and obviously in their reticle they can only see a certain amount of space, right? And then you've got a spotter who's got like binoculars, and you've got the intelligence that are feeding the information into him so that they can go and have a full 360. But what's fascinating is that he was allowed to get to this position. It shows a real lack of security for the former president, which is quite strange. and to allow this guy to get anywhere near it, it's quite. And like I was telling you before, there were people saying at the time it wasn't a bullet, it was a bit of glass. You can't, like they were saying that there's an invisible glass shield in front of this guy. Nobody got shot behind, because if you look at when he was shot, there was nobody moving behind him. They all kind of pulled out their phones, and that's a real indictment on society, that people were just sitting there pulling out their phones while shots were going out. And it's a real reflection on society at the moment. And the fact that he was like shouting, "I want my shoes," and then he had time to pump his fist in the air and get that photo, I don't know. It's just, I don't think, like you said, I agree with you 100%. There are people who are anti-Trump who are not going to suddenly vote for Trump because he nearly got killed. I doubt that very much. But, maybe...
I think what's going to happen is, hopefully, I mean, Trump hasn't railed, to my knowledge, at the time of this taping, he hasn't blamed the Democrats, which that'd be the big worry, right? Like, Trump comes up with a conspiracy theory saying it's the Democrats, and then people believe him. I mean,
yes,
every Democratic person of any kind of leadership in this country has come out and said it's awful, as they should.
Correct.
I mean, political violence, no matter the circumstances, is awful,
I think they both said it. I think Biden and him said it without becoming like children. Like, Trump didn't say something outrageously childish, like, "I saw Biden on a roof with a sniper's rifle." But then again, Biden did think it was JFK that got shot.
I hope that that's where it ends. I hope that this isn't used. I mean, it will be used by like the QAnon conspiracy theory, ultra-right. Like, it will be used by a certain segment of the population to push conspiracy theories, but I hope it's not done from the top down,
Yeah.
I hope. I mean, I don't know. That, to me, that's really going to divide two segments of the country. I don't know how you come back from that. So I hope it just kind of quietly goes away. I hope he gets better, and I hope he loses the election. I mean, that's the best case scenario.
That's what you want. But you see, 2 days later, today, I've just read on the news that his Florida confidential information charge has been dropped. So where he had stored all of this confirmation boxes of info, it's been dropped today because the judge who was like ruling
apparently she was very sympathetic to Trump and just kind of delayed the case and killed it for him. At least that's what the media is alleging. I don't really know her personally, but yeah.
No, it's been dropped today. So you're like, wow. You'd thought he was banged to rights with that, but now they're saying that the guy that brought the prosecution wasn't qualified to bring that prosecution to it, and it was, even though they got pictures of him with the boxes, and it's just unbelievable. So, yeah, I don't understand American politics whatsoever.
Yeah, it's baffling. Was it always this baffling?
I don't know. Maybe it's because of age. I pay more attention to it. I don't think I've ever paid as much attention to the news as I do now. I don't think I've ever listened to the radio as much as I do now. Whereas I'd prefer listening to radio over watching TV or news. I don't know why. Maybe it just happens with age. When I was young and my dad would listen to the radio, I thought, loser. But now I kind of see why.
All the zealotizing, all that happened after 9/11. And I mean, the country invaded Iraq on suspicion of weapons of mass destruction that weren't there. I mean, the Clinton impeachment. These were things that were happening in the late 90s, early 2000s when you and I were too young to be paying attention. It must have felt bad then. I mean, it must have felt surely like anyone who spoke out against the war in Iraq had their career ruined. Correct. It was that bad. And they had no right to go there. And they destroyed a country and killed tens, hundreds of thousands. Like,
and then they're vindicated a decade later. It was true. There was no reason for the war. It was completely made up and whatever it was. And people like Tony Blair, who, openly here called, warmongers and the murderers, have become knighted. He's Sir Tony Blair now, even though he made a terrible, terrible decision by taking
Canada
us to
didn't
war.
go to Iraq. We went to Afghanistan where the Taliban were. Like, we went with the UN, but we didn't go to Iraq. And that caused a major cooling of relations between Canada and the U.S. that I don't know has recovered. But all that aside, I'm just saying, like, there have been moments in American politics. I mean, there was the Civil War, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
That was only, 150 years ago? That's
Absolutely.
4 or 5 generations ago. I mean, things have been worse, I hope. Maybe they haven't. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a case of you have to be there to know it, like some of your jokes. So, yeah.
Even if you are there.
Even if you are there, yeah. I mean, even if you were at the Civil War, you'd have got the jokes, right?
Mm-hmm.
No.
It's just horrific, but seems like, knock on wood, people died. It's sad. It's scary.
Are we still talking about that or my constipation? I can't remember.
We're talking about Trump.
Right, carry on.
It seems like it's maybe gonna blow over.
I don't think so. I think this will be politicized. I think it's very, very, very optimistic of you, and maybe that's the liberal side of you that maybe thinks it'll blow over. It will not. It will be heavily politicized. It'll be part of his campaign now. I think today he gets his nomination gets confirmed, if I'm right, in Milwaukee or something.
Something like that.
Something like that, and he'll use it. I mean, he's a smart guy. Take whatever you want away from the guy. He's a smart guy. He plays every hand he gets, the guy plays it to the maximum. So let's just see what happens.
He did say this. He told the New York Post that he appreciated the, quote, fine and, quote, very nice call that he received from President Biden in the aftermath of the event, noting that the race between them could be more civil going forward. He does have the opportunity of unifying the country. That's how he could win this thing. If he just makes a 180 and says, I've been shot, I've done a lot of thinking, and I want to work with the Democrats, and this is a moment of unity, he would win the election if he did that.
100%. I agree.
And then he could go to being and then as soon as he gets inaugurated, he could go back to being a nutcase. If I were him, that's what I would do. I would say,
that would be phenomenal.
I've been shot. It's made me think a lot about life and the division in this country. I think Biden is, I don't agree with him, but I think he's a good guy. I now want to work with the Democrats. I want to be a unifying, force. He could do that. He would win in 2 seconds.
Dude, he could come out and say, I'm really introspective. I've had a near-death experience. I want to ban guns now. All these
he wouldn't have to say anything about policy. If he just said, I called Nancy Pelosi, I called Chuck Schumer, I called Biden. These aren't bad people. They just want to go in a different direction for the country, but I want to unify. I want to work with Democrats. If he just said those words, he would have win in a landslide.
Absolutely. It would be amazing. But then do you think his ego and his personality allows him to do that? That's the biggest question.
I don't know. The New York Post, who I never believe a word what they write, says that Trump alluded to the fact that the, quote, race between them could be more civil going forward.
Cliffhanger, David. Cliffhanger.
Yeah. We just figured out how to win Trump the election.
David, we are political commentators now. Add that to the resume, David.
Tony, tomorrow, can we talk about anal fissures and whatnot? I feel like we've been too serious the last few times you've been on the show.
We have been too serious, David, and you've completely skipped over my constipation, which I'm not happy about, but maybe tomorrow we'll talk about it.
I mean, what is there to say? You're constipated. Just, Metamucil and lots of liquids.
There you go. Thanks, David. I'm going to go to the toilet now anyway.
Okay, we've done the serious political stuff. We've had the serious conversation. But if you look at what happened over the weekend at the Trump rally, astonishing photographs. They are remarkable. And we are going to take that all apart with our photography correspondent, who usually comes on the show to talk tech, Carmi Levy. So in a moment's time, it's time for photography time as we analyze the startling photos of President Donald Trump this weekend. It's time for photography time with photography expert Carmi Levy. You normally come on the show to discuss technology, but what people may or may not know about you is when I interview you, you have all your old cameras in the background. And I know you just have them there for when you do TV appearances on Zoom so that you look, I don't know. You got to play a part when you're on TV, right? How you doing, also? How you doing, Carmi?
I'm doing great. Wish I were getting out more often with my camera. It's kind of funny. People don't realize that when I'm not talking tech or writing about it or speaking about it, in my free time, that's what I do. I pick up a camera and I just go find things to shoot. And I've been doing that since I was a kid. Photography has been a passion of mine for almost my entire life. And it's the thing that I do when I want to sort of get away from all this technology craziness, and it's very cathartic.
See, I know this about you because I once asked you to do nude portraits of me, but you told me you didn't have a really strong macro lens, and so you wouldn't be able to capture me. This is a terrible joke.
Yeah, David certainly didn't. You didn't offer to pay for the rental of the lens, so I backed off. Sorry. next time.
So, look, I'm not the biggest Trump fan. I'm also not a fan of violence. I think it would be absolutely wild, psychotic, bizarre, sociopathic to wish physical harm on any politician. I am appalled by the political violence that happened this weekend, but I'm also in awe, just from a photography standpoint, of what we saw. There are photos of Trump that make him look, I don't know. I mean, it's been likened to that Liberty leading the people, French Revolution with Lady Liberty and the flag. Like, Trump looks amazing in these photos, as he thankfully was not injured. I know two people were critically injured. One person was killed. So this is not like a laughing matter at all. People were seriously injured and one person killed. This was a tragic political shooting, but I did want to talk to you about it purely from like a photography standpoint, because the photos are amazing and they are shot in horrific, blink of an eye moments where I think someone who really is a professional photographer, who really is an artist, can rise to that occasion. It's not just photographer. It's like, I don't know what the skill is when you're a good wartime photographer, because you're not just dealing with composing frames, you're dealing with a battleground where you're like these photographers in Ukraine or in the Middle East who just capture things in that moment, risking their lives. I know later, the shooter was neutralized very quickly. Perhaps these photographers weren't actually in any danger, but still, they don't know that. They hear bullets and they click their shutter.
That's right. In the case of the photo where the Secret Service is trying to hustle him away and Donald Trump is, he's got his arm up and he's got blood on his face and he's defiant. And he's telling the crowd to fight on. And the American flag is waving in the background. What's remarkable about that shot, that it was by Associated Press photographer Evan Vucci, is that Evan Vucci was in the crowd, and there's video of him racing to the podium as shots rang out. His instincts, and he's been shooting for decades. He's won a Pulitzer Prize. This is a guy who's been everywhere, seen it all, done it all. He's taken iconic photos previously of, the Iraqi journalist who threw a shoe at President Bush. This guy knows it. And so his instincts just triggered him. And he just, without even thinking about himself, didn't know that the shooter was neutralized, didn't know what was going on, but it was just get the shot. Positioned himself there. He knew that the Secret Service would be hustling the president off stage, and he prepared himself for it. His camera was literally at the ready. He composed it even before they got him off the stage, and they kind of hauled him up and then hauled him off. So he was ready for it. And that's what great photographers do. Anyone can pick up a smartphone and take a picture. Great photographers, they're storytellers, and they know over the decades that they've been shooting how stories play out, and they know how to position themselves to be ready for those photos. And I do this all the time. I'm not just interested in the photos. I'm interested in the story behind it. And I love, in my Instagram feed, I often tell the story of the photo that I took. I want people to know what I was thinking, how I got to that point. And just understanding the background of this remarkable photo and the other one taken by a New York Times photographer, Doug Mills, who took that picture of the bullet whizzing by Donald Trump's head. Talk about perfect, incredible timing. This is a guy that's been shooting for the New York Times for over 4 decades. And following presidents for just as long. So he also knows what to expect. What remarkable luck that you had this degree of skill to capture history in that terrible place and at that terrible moment. Not to underestimate the sheer tragedy of this all. A man lost his life protecting his family, but you want events like this recorded for posterity. The legacy is visual, and we remember moments like this by visual assets like this, and I don't think they get any better than this.
What a wanton disregard for your own personal safety in the pursuit of your craft. Like, who knows what the Secret Service snipers are doing? You'd like to think they're very well trained, although there are those that are saying now, I think it's too soon to say, but there was an omission where they weren't watching where the shooter was situated. They should have seen him climb up there and figured it all out before it happened. But these photographers are running towards Trump to get their shot as he's being whisked away and as he's bleeding and as bullets are flying. Who knows what's going to happen? If you put a camera towards your face, you could be misidentified as a shooter. Like, it's unthinkable to me that someone would rush towards towards that. But I guess that's true of the Secret Service too. You know, they shield their asset to protect them. I assume they're wearing bulletproof vests, but still, that doesn't cover your whole body. And there are armor-piercing bullets. I mean, I don't know if the shooter had them, but what happens in these moments of crisis? Bravery in the pursuit of art, bravery in the suit of protecting your asset. It's just remarkable. And with the bullet whizzing photograph, that can't have been timed. I mean, that must be sheer luck, right?
It was as lucky as you can get, because you can't foresee that. You can't time that. There's no way to know. Even if you had all of the data beforehand, even if you knew, which of course that was not the case here, but even if you knew where the gunman was, how far they were, how long the flight time was, like even if you had all that information and you somehow had it in your mind, and that you use that to determine the optimal time to trigger and the optimal position to compose the shot, you will still likely not get it. So, I mean, this is as miraculous a picture, and I certainly don't want to take anything away from Doug Mills from the New York Times, who that is a remarkable photo in a lifetime of remarkable photos. But I mean, that is, what's we often call it. It's not luck, because he was in the right place and he made sure he was in the right place.
He hit his shutter button on burst mode. I'm sure, like he did everything right, but
exactly.
But it could have been the wrong split second that the shutter closed, and he would have missed that shot.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
That's right. And and I shoot, like I have a kind of love aviation as well. So I'll go to air shows, I'll go to airports, and I'll shoot fast moving planes and other objects. And you think you got the shot and you didn't, or you think you didn't get the shot and you did, or something, a plane comes from out of nowhere at some ridiculous speed and you're not even ready for it, and you somehow get the picture. You somehow, your instincts just kick in and you pick it off. Great photographers can do this. Great photographers have what I call a higher hit rate, because they're already prepared. They already have all of their settings locked in. They've already scanned the crowd. They already know what they're looking for. And they also have, it's a singular, that I'm not thinking about my safety. It's that singular devotion to getting a shot. And Evan Vucci, in every interview that he's done since then, he's talked about it, because when he was talking to the Daily Beast, he said, it's a moment in history that you have to document, right? Being a photographer, you have to be there. I can't write about it later. I can't go back in time and get a redo. So you have to do your job. And in that moment, all he cares about is he's got his camera, he's got a subject, he's going to get that shot. Everything else just fades away. Nothing else matters. Get the photo, think about it later. And that is if you're not a photographer, it's kind of hard to sort of really understand, but the best of the best, this is how they think, it's how they're programmed. And obviously it results in not just a snapshot of something, but an actual work of art that captured history. These are remarkable assets that we are likely going to be talking about for decades. And we live in an age where the quality of the photography and the tools that these geniuses have in their hands are so good that it raises the chances, raises the potential that they will capture something remarkable. And thankfully, on this tragic day, both of these gentlemen did.
Well, let's talk more about that Evan Vucci photograph, because it looks kind of perfect to me. You got the American flag, you got the Secret Service huddling, trying to get Trump down, you've got the blood, you've got Trump's fist defiantly held up in the air. It's an amazing photograph, and it's shocking to me that he got it at that time. And it's like 99% skill, getting in the right place, getting the camera in the right mode, hitting the shutter button, running towards where you get the shot. But then it's that 1% luck that all the characters in your frame and all the circumstances of your frame are all lined up. So it's like 99% skill, but that 1% of luck, I think, does play as well, because Trump could have easily have ducked at the wrong moment, and then you don't get your shot.
That's right. And what's amazing here is that there's video of him actually sprinting across through the crowd and getting to that spot just below the podium and getting that shot. And there's someone else by his side as well, also shooting, but only he got the shot that is getting all the attention. And so you're right. You can, there's you bring a huge amount of skill and experience to the game, but if you position yourself, a foot this way or that way, you might not have the right angle. Maybe he'll pop up over here. Maybe the Secret Service will haul him up over there. He was ready. And that is like where everything just clicks. Everything happens in that one moment. And frankly, in the hands of someone else, that shot probably would not have happened. Someone else would have missed it, because they would have had to think through it. And at this point, Evan Vucci is not thinking. He is just operating on years of experience that all of us could only dream of. And he's operating on a level that, the average, person who's taking snapshots at a rally doesn't really understand. And that's why he can get that shot. There's a lot of chatter on social media that it was a doctored photo that based on imagery that they had from before, that the sky wasn't that blue and where was the American flag, but it's the angle. Right, he's shooting from down below, and of course that enhances the presidential look of the president as he's defiantly gesturing to the crowd, and that changes the whole tenor of the photo as well. And when you're composing, you're always thinking about where does my lens need to be relative to the subject? Should it be above it, at the same level, below, to the side? What gives me the most powerful image? And there's no one rule that applies to everything, but clearly in this case, as a photo that indicates strength, defiance, power, he was in the right place at the right time. And obviously he couldn't change that. He didn't have a lot of choice, but with the choices that he had, the options that were available to him, he made the optimal calls, and he was in probably the best possible place. And he read the situation as it evolved so perfectly. And I'm suspecting photographers, I know I will, but photographers will be studying the photo and its background for years, because there's lots of example here of best practice that we all can apply, whether we're professionals or not. We can all apply that to our photography as well, to take better pictures and tell better stories.
Carmi, thank you for going over this photo with me. I appreciate your time.
Wonderful being with you. Thanks so much, David.
Carmi Levy is a technology but also photography expert, and this was time for Photography Time. That's the show. Thanks for listening. I'll be back tomorrow, and you have yourself a merry little evening.